Welcome to Unit 4, beginning Six Sigma Black Belt. We're going to be talking a little bit about define, actually a whole lot about define. Again, we're going to focus on the customer. So what's the customer telling us? First of all, who is our customer? First, internal customers. These are people within the organization that use our product. And then we have external. These are the people that actually pay money for the organization's whatever they're producing, the service or goods. Opondi says, well, which one's most important? Well, if you're the process owner, the most important one is the person that uses your product or service. That's simple. It could be internal or external. But you got to know these people. And customers can be basically lumped into 5 groups. Current happy customers, these are the ones that everybody wants. Current unhappy customers, these are customers that use you, but they really don't want you. I'll use an example. We used to have at one time, this company was the biggest forklift manufacturer in America. Went bankrupt. Couldn't get anybody to supply them hydraulic valves, except for us. We took them because we had to. We couldn't get the customers we really wanted, and so ultimately, when they didn't pay their bills, it helped put my old company under. Lost customers. These are customers that we once had and went somewhere else. Competitors' customers, these are the customers we want to steal from our competitors. And prospective customers are customers that don't even know they're potential customers. You go out there and say, you could be a customer of ours. They don't even know it. They're not buying anywhere right now. So you got to get some information on this customer, right? So how do you do that? The most obvious one is surveys. The trouble is, not everybody turns in their survey. If you get 10-15% back on a mail survey, you're doing really, really well. And usually the only ones that reply are those that are very, very happy or those that are very, very upset. Focus groups, you gather a bunch of people and just sit there and talk to them, let them discuss it. Interviews, if you've ever been to a mall and had somebody come up with a clipboard, ask you some questions, this is an interview type customer. Trouble with that, though, is the only customer you know about is the one shopping at that mall. Online, other stores, you don't know anything about them. Complaint system, this is huge. For every customer that complains, there are 10 that don't. They just go away and find somebody else, especially if you're selling a commodity product or service. Market research, you actually go in and find out your market and do some research. Jeff Bezos did this with Amazon is a good example. He said there's a huge potential for online purchasing. Shopper programs, I actually got into a mystery shopper program where I would get paid to stay at hotel rooms or eat a pizza, buy a pizza and evaluate it. Oh, the things I do for money. So how do you collect data on the customer? Whether it's a targeted method where you just pick out a specific customer's group and ask them, and multi-level, that's where you look at different customer groups, surveys or interviews. Customer scorecards, this is where you keep different metrics on the customers. And I'm going to vent here a little bit. Back when my wife had a lawn service business, we did a survey on customer complaints, or we had the records. So I went back there and found about over 90% came from one customer. So we went back and said, look, Miss Hamya, we just can't make you happy. We suggest you get somebody else. Well, she asked, well, who can I get? So I named our competitor. It was a 2 for that day. We got rid of one of our customer we didn't want, and plus I kind of nailed it to a competitor. Data warehousing, this is huge, right? We're doing one on probability of detection for ASTM. So what we did is I found an online email data bank, and the company that hired me to do the class sent over 6,000 emails. The information's out there. It's been done, a lot of it. And data mine, this is where you got existing data, and you can dig into it and find out why aren't they buying our products, why aren't they using our service, why are they using our competitors. Customer audits, actually, if you get a chance, go into the customer and see what the customer's doing. We toured one of our local factories, and it's pretty clear what kind of training they need. We're offering training. Supplier audits, sometimes your suppliers know better than we do about what the customers want. Go in and see what they had to say. And I'm going to send in the readings, a little bit on quality function deployment, QFDs. Just like we talked about stakeholders before, you got to take care of your stakeholders. Project stakeholders is a much smaller group than what we talked about before. These are like the process managers, people in the process, people upstream, people downstream, customers, of course, suppliers, and taking care of the money. It kind of goes back to what Deming said about everything's interrelated. So the stakeholders are all interdependent, all interrelated to each other. You change one or screw one, well, you affect the whole process, the whole project. Okay, let's talk about customers a bit. First one, internal, right? Ishikawa says it's the next operation as a customer. Basically, it's the next person that uses your product or service is your customer. A key thing to remember, staff members, these are like engineering, design, manufacturing, purchasing. These are all service providers. The customer has no desire to pay for these. This is not a value-added activity. Necessary but non-value added. And so their customer are the people that do create the value. Again, staff members are service providers to those creating value. Their customers are those that create the value. And they found that management practices have great impact on employee satisfaction. Number one reason people leave their job, they don't like the management, right? And they found that that's important also because happy employees, satisfied employees, directly leads to satisfied external customers. And the biggest complaint in any organization is communication. So you got to be sure you communicate. An informed employee is a happy employee, generally. And training, employees need to be trained on their job. We've all given that task and we don't know what to do. And it's frustrating. And frustration leads to stress, which leads to unsatisfied employees. So we got the external customers. These are people that are not part of the organization, but they're impacted by what goes on with that organization. First type is the end user, kind of obvious. These are the people wandering around Walmart, driving a Ford pickup or something. These are the people that actually buy the product. Intermediate customer would be the Walmart or the Ford dealerships, right? They're the ones that provide the product to the end user. And impacted parties. This is interesting, actually. We don't think of it very often, but this is like, say you're making coolers for Walmart. The ones that provide the foam that goes within the coolers, that'd be an impacted party. Of course, you got city governments, the police, other drivers, if you're talking about a Ford pickup. But these are impacted parties. They don't actually purchase the product, but they're impacted by that purchase or of the product or service. So let's talk about external customers. Well, what is there's this thing called customer group. Then there's consumer market versus business market. If you can get in the consumer market, what do they bring? Or even a business market, well, you get high profit margins. It's not untypical to see the price of a product double or even triple what it costs. The risk at the market, you got to remember that people are always looking for choices, and if you make one mad, they're going to change. In fact, they can go out of the market. I don't even own a printer anymore because I don't need one that often. So the printer market's going away. Laptops, another one. Think about electronics. Competition. If you got a good thing going, it won't be long until somebody's going to compete with you. Where there's money, there's going to be people flocking to that business to provide that service or that product. And growth. Can you grow the business? I remember when Amazon was struggling back about 15, 20 years ago. My goodness, how that's changed. So there are a couple different types. There's the consumer market. These are people that actually buy the product. Biggest source of GDP in the United States is the consumer. What they spend drives the economy. Business market is a little bit more small, but also very targeted. Both are customers and both are external and both are important. This is customer service. This is huge, huge. A guy named Schaff, way back about 30 years ago, came up with a 5-step program. He said, listen to the customer. The customer's going to tell you your needs, and you want to focus on those needs. You want to divide a strategy. Again, focus. I'll use an example. While I was at the gym, a woman basically, they had the radio, but the TV was too loud. So she called the manager and said, hey, I'd like to turn down the TV so I can hear the music. It's on my favorite station. I like the station. Well, the Matt comes in, and bless his heart, comes in and changes the station to his favorite station, turns down the TV, and leaves. The woman basically said, you know, I can go to Anytime Fitness and just wear my earbuds, and quit the gym because of that and went to a different gym. All because Matt thought it was more important to listen to his station than the others. Also, you ever been to a store or try to buy a car, and the salesman tries to tell you what you need or want instead of listening to what you tell him what you need and want, right? You got to come up with metrics for customer service. Very tough. Train, find the right employees. The natural instinct of people is when somebody complains is to fight back. Don't. It's hard to get somebody that just sympathizes and has empathy for the customer. Again, you want to recognize and reward those in customer service. You probably got the toughest job. Again, 3 good attaboys, attagirls to 1, you screwed it up. Interesting statistics, 70% of all customers quit using companies because of service, not product quality. All right, this actually was done a study, Whiteley, about the same time Schaff was doing his bit. 70% leave because of service. By far, the biggest way to boost your profits, to get the biggest bang for the buck, is just by retaining the customers you have. You know, most resources are spent trying to get new customers. This is the advertising, the commercials, all that, right? However, if you just retain 5% of your existing customers, you'll double the profit as opposed to trying to get new customers. This is done by, I think it was Zimmerman, back about 30 years ago. There are 5 stages of a life cycle, and I know this one is from Zimmerman, but there's the acquisition phase. This is where you spend a lot of money trying to get somebody in. If you look at beer commercials, they're geared towards about 18, 19, 20-year-olds, right? Because by the time you get 35, I heard this from a beer manufacturer, by the time somebody is 35, you know what kind of beer they're going to drink for the rest of their lives. So you got one shot at it, right? Get them in there, and that's why I see all these cute, funny beer commercials, because they're targeting 18, 19, 20-year-olds before they get beer. Attrition. The customer just kind of loses enthusiasm and kind of finds ways to be disqualified and just leaves, right? And then you get defection. This is where you actually lose the customer. And then reacquisition. You hope whoever got the customer afterwards comes back and screws it up enough so you can regain the customer. But it costs you a lot. Just it costs not as much as the initial acquisition, but still quite a bit. So where do we come up with these customer metrics? Well, there's several sources. Your suppliers, not only do they supply you, they supply your competition. And they know what is happening all around. Just ask them, right? Your internal processes. People within the company will understand what happens. And your customers themselves, just ask them what they want. Garvin and Besterfield came up with some dimensions of quality. A big question is, what is quality? If you ever read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, tough question, right? They came up with these 9 dimensions. It's the performance, features, conformance, reliability, durability, service, response, aesthetics, and reputations. Attach a metric to each one of those 9. You'll be okay. Oh, by the way, I don't know what they are. It's unique to every product, every service. The American Production Quality Council been doing studies for decades. Same three things every customer wants: price, quality, service, or support. See what you think of these. Of course, price, how much does it cost? I personally try the cheap one first. Quality, does it work the way I want it to work? And is it conforming to what I need it to do? Right? Delivery, how fast am I going to get it? Reliability, again, not just on the product, but also if you say it's going to be there on Monday, is it going to be there on Monday? Demand, if I change my demand, are you able to meet those demands? And then you start getting into some esoteric stuff: color, product range, design. Brand name means a lot, right? Technical support, if you got a technical product, and post-sales support. I'm going to tell a quick story. They did a study. They had 24 different kinds of jellies. They set it up at the front of a grocery store and said, hey, here, try these 24 jellies and see if you want to buy one. Kind of like, sample before you buy. 3% of people sampled the 24 and then bought. Then they turned around, they tried the same thing, only three different types of jellies. Said, here, try one and pick one. 12%, actually a fourfold increase, bought jelly after sampling. Turns out that people think they want selection, but they don't. They actually want to be simple. Walmart's going this way. They're going from 14,000 line items in each store down to about 7,200. Well, I'll just leave it there. Think about that. We'll discuss it in the discussion. I'm not going to put any typing on this one. But basically, what I'm saying here, your customer metrics, how do they link to your internal metrics? If your internal metrics say first pass yield, defects per unit, however you want to measure it, customer returns, how do they link to the customer metrics? If they don't link, then you got to really look hard at your internal metrics. If it doesn't focus on the customer, it's really not a value-added metric. Customers vary from what level of the organization you're looking at. So you got to look at each level and say, what is your customers? The business level, you're probably looking at shareholders, probably top management, employees. So this is basically financial data, stock price, market share, return on investment, RONA, things like that. Operations level, these are people that you worry about who purchase your product. They're external. And also those who do the internal customers, who manage production operations. So what you're looking at here are basically operation efficiency, first pass yield, productivity, things like that. And finally get down to the process level. And you got to remember, employees for an organization are a customer. It's not intuitive, but employees are a customer. Okay. So what you're looking for is like metrics like job satisfaction, training, money, how fast you can advance, and the sense of well-being. This is at the process level. This is something that's often overlooked. That's the internal customer. I've attached in the readings a "Are we making progress?" survey. Take a look at that. See if it's something you can use. But some things that make customers, internal customers, happy are state of the company. Is the company making money? Are they well regarded within the community? What is the state of and the perception is a big thing here. It's not reality, it's perception. That's what drives this. How's your quality? Are we better today than we were before? How do we compare to competitors? What is our quality? State of the process. Remember the three things Duran focuses on. How are we doing on our quality? Reaction to policy. We've all been inflicted on dumb policy inflicted on us by management. So if that happens too many times, there goes your internal customer satisfaction. Job satisfaction. I like what I'm doing. I like the boss. I like where I'm working. All these things play into job satisfaction. Find the overall thing, company satisfaction. Yeah, it's a good place to work. In fact, I want my kid to work here is what you're looking for. Again, is it a good place to work? This is the voice of the external customer, and this is just a list that I compiled from a couple lists. Let's just talk about surveys right away. You got the immediate survey, what happened right after the service or product was bought, follow-up survey 6 months, a year later, and community surveys. Again, I'm not a big fan of surveys. They either hate you or they love you, and if you get 10% return, you're doing pretty good. Personal contact, very good. You gotta be careful of that. They're not going to tell you to your face how bad you are. Contact reports, other people, what they say about it. Interviews, focus groups, emails, test marketing guarantees, inspectors, ombudsman. These are people that talk for other people, kind of like an AARP talks for retirees. Toll-free numbers, and I've web pages, Yelp, social media. You all know what I'm talking about. I don't need to go into depth on this. So how do you analyze customer feedback, public opinion, that type of thing? Think surveys, rankings on Yelp, things like that. So what questions are you trying to answer? Make sure you're getting the right answers. Be careful of the sampling errors. We're very much aware of that. Last election, the traditional way of doing voter polling is you call up on a landline and ask them who you're voting for. Trouble with that is a big part of the population, the younger part of the population, doesn't own landlines anymore, so you don't get a complete sample. If somebody doesn't respond, you can't ignore that. There's something being said about that. These things are subjective, right? We'll talk a little bit about that later on Likert. How do you analyze it? You ignore the results. So many times, people just look at it and say, they don't know what they're talking about. I know what's best for my customer. Again, we've all had that salesman try to tell us what we want instead of us telling him, right? Too many questions. Man, after about the fourth question, people are bored with it. You're not going to get a good answer. And in the reading, there'll be a thing called Likert scale. This is basically where you have something like you say, well, how's that cheese taste? You give it a score of 1 to 5, right? You might give it a 4, which is not bad, but it's a whole lot better than when you give the 2 on. So what you do then is you take that and you can compare the different cheeses. This is a Likert scale. Critical customer requirements. Well, let's talk about this. Customers determine value, and that's huge. That's never going to change. We all do that. You walk into Walmart to buy pickles. You sit there and you spend a few minutes looking at all the options for pickles, weighing the cost versus the benefit of each choice you have. Customers determine value. We all do that calculation. Again, APQC, they've already said that for 40, 50 years, price and quality are the most important factors, right? Cheapest price, best quality. I've always heard this acronym, cost, quality, features, availability, the 4 things customers want. Again, I'm going to focus on the features a bit. Make sure that it's a feature that the customer wants, all right? Not something you think he wants. It's tough to convince a customer he wants something. It's been done before. I never thought I needed a computer or a smartphone, right? Customer expectations, there are 4 levels. There's the basic level, which is basically just what it means. It's the minimum. It's the essential part of it. And then you got the expected. There's some that aren't necessary, but yeah, I kind of expect it. I kind of expect a cup holder in my car. And then you get the desired. This is stuff I want, but not necessarily worth the cost. I don't need a hood ornament on my car, but if it's not too much, I might buy it. Then unanticipated. This is the things that surprise customers. I was so nicely surprised when I found I could plug my smartphone into my car and hear iPod broadcasts over the radio, right? So the customer's going to give you this list of needs. The first one is stated needs. This is what the customer says he wants. An example, a customer will say he wants a car or needs a car. The real need he needs is he needs transportation, right? The car is just a mode to get it, right? Then the perceived needs, I can't get a used car. I want a new car. I think I need a new car. Cultural needs, say, okay, I want to get a Cadillac. That's the best thing I can get out there in America. And then the unintended need, well, yeah, I'm going to use it to haul firewood. Well, okay, right. That's an unintended need. Again, you got to know all 5 of these to figure it out. I don't know who came up with this, but it's been around for a long time. Let's talk a little bit more about customers. Again, you got to look at their needs. You got to have convenience. It's got to be easy to use. Safety, you can't kill anybody. Product simplification features. People like simple things. They don't want to have to think. I look at my old remote I had for my satellite versus the remote I have for my Roku. Nice job, Roku. I think that's the biggest reason I switched. I can't tell you how many times my 92-year-old neighbor calls me up and says, "Hey, Scott, I can't da-da-da." I go over and put her old TV back on channel 3 for her because she's got about a 50, 60 buttons. She doesn't know what happens. Communications, huge to talk to. Somebody calls up. We've all called up to ask a question to a company and gotten into that phone button. We got to press about 20 buttons to get to the person you want. People want information and they want communication. They want service, again, and customer service, the biggest driver away from a company. So we all do this, and we want to talk about what is the customer telling us. We use what's called the voice of the customer. And how do we use that? Well, we make it on decisions on products. How good's our product doing? What can we do for that? And using that information, then we can get the features and specs. The customer tells us what they want in the specs. It's either implied or they directly tell us. And then we do improvement plans. We develop metrics from these kind of things, and we start seeing how satisfied they are, and we push and develop those things that satisfy our customers. I'm going to call this slide our critical slide. Some things you got to do. Critical to quality. What do you have to do to make sure you get the quality that our customers expect? Mercedes-Benz was in a bad spot about 20 years ago because they used inspection to get their level of the Mercedes-Benz up, and it was very good quality, right? They'd check it and recheck and stuff like that. And then along came Lexus, and they had basically all the features and the same level of quality, but only a third of the price, right? So Mercedes-Benz had to put up, make some changes, right? So cost of quality improvements is the next one. And again, how much does it cost to make these improvements? If they're going to increase their inspection or decrease it, what was that going to cost them in their overall quality? So they had to come up with a better way. I'm talking about Mercedes-Benz now. Critical delivery. I was working with an insurance company here in Arkansas, and they made a health insurance company, with the biggest one in the state. Well, the biggest complaint was it took too long to get their money, the patients. Well, it turned out that they said, well, we only take a day turnaround. Turned out the doctors took day, 2, 3, it varied all over the place. How long the doctor used to submit the bill. So it was critical to delivery, right? So they went back and beat up on the doctors, and they actually fired a couple that weren't quick enough because they wanted that reputation. It was a customer requirement, right? Critical to the process. What do you have to do? What's the bare minimum you have to do to get this thing out the door? And critical to safety. I don't need to talk about that much. It used to be you just paid somebody the cost of whatever they killed somebody. You paid the cost of whatever they'd earned in their lifetime. Now it's you pay the cost plus about 10 times more in punitive damages. So how do you get the customer requirements? Well, there's several tools. Kano model. You got the dissatisfiers. These are things that you don't have will just automatically turn the customer away. Satisfiers, these are the things the customer expects to make them satisfied. And then you get the delighters, right? These are the things that the customer doesn't expect, but man, he sure does like it. Back when my wife had her U-Haul business, one of the things we found is if we could make the cabin smell like bleach because it showed we sanitized it, man, that was a big delighter for the trucks, right? Surprised me. Very easy to do, just spray. But anyway, got the quality function deployment. I've got a lot of that in the reading. Cause and effect matrix, I'll use that in the reading. Perceptual maps. This is basically where you just basically say, what is your perception of the how's the customer perceive your company or your features. You got two axes. You got the satisfaction, you got the importance, and you plot this thing, right? You find the things that are big satisfiers and very important. Those are the things you got to work on. And then you go back to your SIPOC SIPOC model and use the feedback from the output and see what that's doing and change your whole requirements. So project charter, this is the foundation for all Six Sigma projects. So why do you do one? Well, if it's a small organization, you can get by very simply and stuff. But when I was at a big corporation, I would have the different plants send me their charters. That way I knew what was going on and make sure we're getting the bang for the buck, because we're paying, $15,000, $20,000 per black belt. Content, what's in it. It varies from organization to organization. I've got a long reading in the readings. Take a look at that. And also you can apply your basic management tools, and also what kind of metrics you're going to do throughout the project. So, okay, last slide. Steps and tools, right? First thing I want to talk about is SMART. It's been around for, oh my goodness, since early 80s, right? It stands for specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, and time related. So you want to be significant, who's involved, what's to be accomplished, what's to be done. And you want to be measurable, what gets measured gets done. Achievable, is it realistic? You're not trying to boil the ocean. And time bound, how fast can you get it done, right? And also, again, going back to that, what gets measured gets improved. So as you do your project, what are you going to do? Is it going to be money? Is it going to be labor savings? Is it materials? Is it scrap reduction? What is it that's saving you? What kind of measures are you going to use to analyze your project? You want to make sure you get reviews, right? It's like raising a kid. If I wanted to be important to my kid when he's growing up, it had to be important to me, or he had to think it'd be important to me. And if it was important to me, he'd get it done, whatever, right? That's why reviews have to be done, management reviews. And if you're in charge, right, as a black belt, you have to review your team's performance, right? And speaking of that, how are you going to break down the work? Who does what, right? Don't try to do all the work yourself. There are people out there that can help you, right, within the organization. And a couple of things we used to do. If you looked up that project management software, you'll see on it probably a big chunk of them have this thing called PERT and CPM, right? Well, PERT stands for Program Evaluation and Review Technique, right? And CPM stands for Critical Path Method. And what you do is you take all the activities you have to do, right? List them out. They're very similar. And you follow a certain path that will get you done the quickest. These use this back in World War II is when it's developed, I think. And to get ships built, reduce it from 7 years down to about 2 months, because they did what they had to. Also, you want to document everything, right? Keep your documents. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is analysis. I'm not going to spend much time on these because you're not going to learn it here. But I want to make you aware of them. Affinity diagrams. Okay, and I'll put in the reading some work on affinity diagrams. But basically, these are sticky notes where you say, what do you have to do to get the project done? Resources and who does what, the motivation. T diagrams, we've all seen these. They look like a flow chart, decision charts, prioritization matrix. What do we do first versus what can wait? And activity network diagrams, fairly new. Well, it's based on old concepts, but basically you put down the steps and what has to happen, key steps along those steps, and to get it done. Again, that's long unit. A lot of discussion, okay? Thanks.